In this heartfelt first part of our conversation with Noelle Ojo, we trace her inspiring journey from humble beginnings to a life defined by creativity, resilience, and faith. Noelle opens up about the experiences that shaped her identity, navigating expectations, learning to embrace authenticity, and finding strength in vulnerability. Through laughter, honesty, and reflection, she reminds us that womanhood and purpose are ever-evolving stories, not fixed destinations. Join us as we explore what it truly means to grow with grace and to keep choosing yourself, even when life gets messy.
Hello, soulmates. You're now listening to Peppers of Stories meant to soothe the souls of women everywhere.
Our topic today is how to migrate and thrive in Africa. Woo! So many people are talking about my exit story. I don't know what options I have and what can I do? So Noelle Ojo is the author of the book, The Black Sit Effect. The Black Sit Effect. And the subtitle is The African American's Guide to Relocating to Africa. And we know that's going to be exciting because Noelle brings 20 years of experience living and working across count them, five African countries. As an expert in continental transition, she guides African Americans seeking to reconnect with their ancestral roots through the challenges and rewards of relocating to Africa. Her comprehensive approach covers cultural adaptation, housing, employment, and community integration. With comparative insights from multiple African nations, Noelle serves as a cultural bridge. So how about that? Breaking down walls and building bridges, providing both practical guidance and often the needed emotional support, never mind the mindset reframing. Her mission is to empower others to live out their dreams by facilitating meaningful connections between African Americans and their ancestral continent. So, thank you for joining us, Noelle. If there's any just nuggets you want to drop or as you introduce yourself, I believe in bottom line up front. So is there anything that you want to make sure our soulmates get out of this episode today that you want to succinctly throw on the table? Now's the time. Welcome.
Okay. Well, first I want to say thank you so much for being here, Patrinia. I've known you for a very long time, and I'm just very proud of all that you've accomplished and achieved and the role that you play in being that bridge builder. You certainly have been that for me in many ways, both professionally and personally. So just wanted to say thank you publicly for that. Edgerman, it's also really nice to get to see you again. It's been a while. I would just like to start by saying the time is now for African Americans to seriously consider it. If it's always been in the back, it's been in the back of a lot of our minds of like, I want to do something different. But now there's a sense of urgency given what's happening politically and like the climate that we have, if we're being very honest. So I will say upfront, if you want to purchase the book, I have both a digital copy or a physical copy. The best place to get it is on my website, and it's called www.theblacksiteffect.com. And then there's like a little, there's a little discount code and stuff there for you. So it's cheaper than buying it from Amazon. And then I get to know who you are and then I can stay in touch. So that's always a better way to do it. So it's theblacksiteffect.com. Is the best way to get it. And like I said, I have a digital version of it, a hard copy version. But the main thing is, I guess the one main takeaway is it's possible if it's something you'd like to do. Also, it doesn't have to be forever. You can make a decision to stay for certain amounts of time and then build your plan around that. So I guess I'll kind of leave it there and then we can go from there. Oh, and I guess I should introduce myself a little bit. And maybe briefly how I don't know. Well, the bottom line is I am a Foreign Service officer with USAID, at least for now. And I've lived many places, one, because I have been a Foreign Service officer, but also not as a Foreign Service officer, which I think is what gave me some level of authority to write the book. If I had only done work where I was kind of sponsored by the U.S. government, I don't think I could have had the I wouldn't have had the relevant experience to share. I don't think I would have been authentic in what I could share because the experience is so different. Some things are the same, but some things are very different. And so with the book, I spend a lot of time talking about if you are just a regular U.S. citizen and you show up, this is how you do that. And so, so that's where my experience came from. And I'm just really happy to be here to talk more about it and any questions you may have.
So Noelle, what initially inspired you to live and work in Africa for 2 decades? And how has your relationship with the continent evolved throughout your experiences across 5 different countries? And I want to do a step back on that question. And I'd like for you to just kind of say, when's the first time you came, why you came, the next time, so that we can appreciate the, we call it soft landing. When you come, you got a company taking care of it. So you've had some soft landings, you've had some hard landings, you've had every dimension of the landing. And
Right.
I would also say for myself, I relocated from Pennsylvania to Nigeria 22 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew a little bit about this topic, and I think spiritually, every African American longs to know where they came from, how they came, who they're connected to. I often tell the story that I really didn't realize I was American until I came to Africa, because I was then addressed as an American, whereas when I'm in America, I'm just Black. So I'm hoping you'll explore some aspects of that identity and what shifts are required. And I know you will. I know you'll cover it very well, but I just wanted to add that piece in to say, it is possible. I'm a witness to that.
Mm-hmm.
So impossible, think I'm possible.
Right.
So tell us your journey back and forth in Africa, and then look into that relationship with the continent. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Well, I'll take you way back. This part is brief, but in terms of what initially attracted me to the continent in general, because, growing up, I was born in the 70s. So in the 80s, it's during the, we are the world time, and any image of Africa was not positive, right? It was distended bellies. It was poverty. It was nothing that anybody would want to be associated with. However, a movie changed my perspective on that. The Color Purple. Love that film on so many levels, but the scenes when Nettie, her kind of the sister who was taken from her, and she ended up going to the continent and living with a family, and the scenes that they would have there, it moved me. One of it is the brilliance of like Quincy Jones and Steven Spielberg, but the story itself, right? And the fact that Alice Walker talked about the fact that as Black Americans, we have been traveling for years overseas and experiencing those things. We have Josephine Baker and James Baldwin and all these people who found solace in other places, right? The whole idea of the warmth of other suns. But just the fact that the culture that existed and the rituals, and I just found it so beautiful and so fascinating. And I knew then that I wanted to explore that. That was always a dream of mine. So this is when I was like in high school. I mean, I saw The Color Purple when I was 10, but I was addicted to the movie and the soundtrack. I bought the soundtrack, like I was really into it. And so
the fact that you remember how old you were when you saw it really talks about what an impact it made in your life. I just think that's beautiful.
Exactly. So that was my first interest in Africa, because it showed it in such a beautiful way, right? And I was like, oh, I want to be a part of that. And just wasn't, at this time I had moved from Brooklyn. As a teenager, I was in the suburbs of DC, didn't quite fit in. I was different. I'm coming from this very urban environment, and now here I am in this like suburbs. And I just felt that I could be appreciated in that culture, or I could find some value in it. right? So just keeping that in mind. And then my, go to college. I went to Florida A&M. I'm a proud Family Rattler. And then I went to NYU for law school. And while at NYU in the first year, I chose NYU because they have a really extensive public interest program. And in the first summer, they give you a stipend to go overseas, anywhere you want. And this is back in the day, right? So internet was still kind of new. This is like 99, but so they have like a big file folder of places that would have you. And I remember, going through the files, and I found this organization, the Federation of Women of Lawyers in Kenya, FIDA. And I wrote them an email and I said, hi, my name is Noelle at the time, Noelle Wright Young. I'm a law student and I'm fully funded. Can I come and work with you? Can I come and intern with you for, 8 weeks? And they wrote me back and they said, sure. So got my ticket. That was my first time getting a passport. So I was about 23 years old. I had to borrow money from my mom and my aunt to get my passport, go through that process. And so my first time overseas was to Nairobi, Kenya, to do that internship. And talking about the harder landing, I didn't have a place to stay. I stayed at the YMCA for like the first 2 or 3 nights. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And it was my first time, like, I don't know, like I'm pretty adventurous. Like, I was in the DC area. I went to school in Florida. I don't have a problem like leaving, right? And going places. And my mother accepted that like a very long time ago. Like, Noelle gonna do what she gonna do. Yeah, she knew who, so I was excited about going, but I was like, oh, I'll sort myself out. Like once I get there, but I was in like a communal YMCA with other like Kenyan women, multiple, it was like, that was my first time having like, I guess like non-indoor plumbing. Like we had like, it was like that type of, it was a hostel essentially, but like old school. I had never experienced that. And I was like washing like with a bucket and all that, but I was cool with it because it was, part of the experience. But within about 3 or 4 days, and this told me about the culture of the place as well. Within about 3 or 4 days of interning, my Kenyan colleagues were like, well, where are you staying? And I'm like, well, I'm they were like, oh no, well, we know somebody that, you can rent a room from them. Would you be open to that? And I was like, yes. So please. And so for about $200, I think they charged me like for the stay. I got to stay with a Kenyan couple, and I would walk to work because I was like maybe a half a mile, maybe 3/4 of a mile from work. And because I lived, I was in the population, like right there. And this was in 2000, summer 2000. And what was interesting about that Kenyan couple, by the way, is that the husband was Indian and the wife was Kikuyu. You do not see that mix often. He was Christian and he married a Kenyan. And they didn't have any children. They were younger, and they treated me like a younger sister, like a younger cousin. And I got to just experience life just like as a young person living there. So I met some of their friends. I went to work out at exercise class. I would take the bus on the weekends. It was the first time I bought like clothes in an open market because I was cold and I didn't have a sweater. Because, everybody tells you Africa's hot all the time, but it's not necessarily. Right. So I was like, it's cold. Need a sweater. So, they're like, oh, we can go buy clothes. And it's like, we're not going to a mall. It's like this, open stalls and you find stuff. I got a cute little Gap sweater, I think. And so I was just living my life there and loved the work. I was a legal intern. I was going to intern and go into cases and following my fellow Kenyan law colleagues. And I knew then, and then I met an African-American woman who was working there at the time, Vernice Guthrie, who was working. She was like what I now know was like an international worker, right? Like, so she was working, I think for, I want to say the League of Women Voters or the National Council of Negro Women, one of the two. And she was there. And so we met and she was like, oh, I'm going to the U.S. Embassy for something. Would you like to accompany me? And I'm like, okay, sure. I had never thought about what anybody does at the embassy. Never thought about it. That's my first time meeting a foreign service officer. And I actually got to meet the ambassador. She had a meeting with the U.S. ambassador. At the time. And that's when I first learned about the foreign service. Had no idea. And so just all these things were in play. So at this point now, that what sent me to law school was Rodney King and wanting to be a civil rights attorney. I was 16 when Rodney King happened, and I was determined to, fight for justice for Black Americans. That was the way, in our collective cultural history, the law is what has protected us, right, and saved us. And you're looking at Justice Thomas and all, the Supreme Court and these decisions, and that was the way I knew to kind of fight for justice. And so that's what I went there for. But once I did that summer, it was done. I was like, oh, I gotta go overseas. Like, what I'm doing forward, I gotta figure out how to get out there, and then that was it. So I'll stop there. At least that's kind of the first, how I first got there, and that not soft landing, but figuring it out. I had a great experience there. And I remember the first time, I'll say this, I tell people, because one of the themes in the book even is like the idea of community, building community. Even as a Foreign Service officer, you're building community every time you move. Every time you move, you have to basically create a life for yourself over and over again. And it can be hard. And it can be incredibly lonely in the beginning. I've had bouts of loneliness that I tell people you can almost touch it, like it can be hard, but you have to work to build that. So I remember when I was in Kenya, I had been there maybe about a month, and I was on a bus, like a local bus. And I ran into somebody who I knew, like a neighbor, and it was like, oh, hey. And I was like, oh, I felt for the first time, I was like, I was a part of the community, something as simple as that, like just walking on the street and knowing someone was like, okay, I'm here. I'm part of the community. And that was special to me. And going back to I never knew I was an American until I went overseas. Because I was the American intern. And so I knew other interns, they were from Mexico, and somebody was from Mexico, somebody was from Canada, somebody was from Norway and all that. But I was like the American. They didn't see me as Black first. I was American first. And it was interesting. But what also came with that was understanding that, like, as Black Americans, people would ask me, like, well, do you own a gun? Stuff about like the stereotypes about Black Americans. They were nice, like they were innocent questions, but it made me think like, well, damn, like that's they're not wrong for thinking that, right? Because that's what's about our culture. And sadly, a lot of it was us, like putting that out there, right? Because remember, this is the 90s, right? So we're here, it's Jay-Z, is Tupac, is, you're at the height of like the hip hop wars. And so that's what African, like, and remember, this is the time when internet is just starting to come and stuff. So it's not Motown and all that. We're talking about like, the golden age of like R&B hip hop, right? And that wasn't necessary. And then gangster rap and all of that. So even though they knew I'm there as a legal intern, y'all, but they're still asking me because they're thinking, oh, it's a violent society as well. Do you own a gun? People who sell drugs, like, and I was like, oh, I didn't get offended because I understood why they asked that. Just like when you have Americans who ask kind of what we would think about would be ignorant questions about Africa, right? Like, do they have cars? Do they have buildings? It's like, come on, y'all.
Exactly. Do you live in tree number 5 or tree number 10?
Exactly. Like silly stuff like that. But then you have to think about who you're talking to, think about why they would think that. It's ingrained, right? It's the messaging. So just all those things were happening. Mm-hmm.
So I want to frame that just a little bit and say that, Noelle, my experience has been is that the media played such a pivotal role in how Africans see Americans and how African Americans see Africans. And on some levels, it's quite intentional, because if I can demonize the people that you might mobilize with, if I demonize the people you might mobilize with, I can keep from rising up as a power. So that ability to zoom out and then put on some empathetic lenses is going to help you dramatically when you come into an African environment as an African American. And I'll share another joke, because this is, on the one hand, I was American when I left the shores, but on the other hand, my first job, when I came to Nigeria in 2003, someone came up to my office and they said, I thought you were American, but you're Black.
Right.
So you get that piece too, because so many people associate Americanism with Caucasian.
Absolutely.
So there are multiple kinds of stereotypes and images you really have to really overcome. But thank you so much. I mean, I've known you for 20 some years, and
Yes.
I didn't know about the color purple sparking you as well as Kenya. I saw in your book about Kenya being your first start, but really thank you for that, because we don't always know what will spark us to make a difference in our lives. So we really need to be open and receptive to new experiences. And that openness and curiosity generally takes us a long way. So when I look at your first stop was Nairobi, Kenya. You and
Mhm.
I met in 2004 or 2003.
3. Remember, we figured out that we arrived on the same day. We just were on different
Oh, wow.
flights.
Different place. Oh my goodness. So
Yeah, because
2000,
we met at the July 4th event at the
yes,
consulate's
at the
house.
consulate. Thank God for the U.S. Embassy. They'll
Right.
keep Americans. But you were such a, when we talk about community, you introduced me to my church and introduced me to the American guest quarters, and it just really, really added a lot of value to my life. So Nigeria was your next stop, and then Cameroon was your next stop, but you
Yes.
had to learn French. I
Yes.
remember you took 15 months to become fluent, and then you went in there and killed it, girl. So you were in Cameroon. And then after Cameroon,
Came back to Nigeria, but private sector. Remember?
yes,
And
I
that was my
remember
second experience living
in
in
Erica.
Nigeria without
Uh-huh.
the support of the US government. Very interesting.
Yes, yes, yes. That's where we found the husband too, though. But so anyway,
Yes.
coming coming back to Nigeria, and then I know Senegal and Ghana.
Yes.
Do I have them all?
You got them all.
Okay, okay. So I just wanted to ground in the fact that she not only knows West Africa, she's done East Africa, and then Cameroon is considered Central Africa. So when you want to know and really know, and I know she's traveled to South Africa, so Southern Africa. So Noelle is the go-to person for this and the perfect person to write the book.
Thank you.
Over to you, Jamin.
You said something interesting about being on part of USAID for now. I'm sorry, I'm going to pivot a little bit.
Right.
And I was just like, oh my God, I'm speaking to an actual person going through that turmoil with what's happening in the world. And it struck me. And I decided to let it sit. And I related back to what you said in the beginning about the time is now. Can you just talk a little bit about what is going through your life, what's going through your head, and what's going through the heads of your colleagues? Because I've stopped watching CNN. Sorry, CNN, forgive me. I can only watch Jimmy Kimmel and The View because they bring in humor. It's hard. I have
Right.
kids in America. It's freaking hard to just watch everything as it's unfolding. It's like a movie. It's hard, and this is
Yeah.
people's lives. So tell me about your life
Yeah.
as it is now. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm ready to talk about that. So when I came back from Ghana, in summer of 2022. So I've been back in Washington for a couple of years now. Me personally, so when I'm overseas as a Foreign Service officer, I was a democracy and governance work. So Petunia knows, she's seen me do that work. I was doing forced child begging in Senegal. I was doing peace and security when I was in Accra with other areas. And I will start by saying I loved my work. Petunia also got to see me in Cameroon. Loved my work. Awesome. Like I love being a Foreign Service officer. Like I loved, and it was my, my gateway to learning the continent, right? Or learning the countries that I was in. And I got the opportunity to see places and go places. So I'll just ground it in that. I love my work. When I came back, I did diversity, equity, and inclusion in Washington because, post Floyd, that was a big thing. But I've always done that. Even when I was I was the head of the Black Allied Law Students Association when I was at NYU, when I was in high school, they used to call me Little Oprah and Sister Soldier. Like, that's just my energy, like very conscious and advocacy type of person. So when George Floyd happened I was still in Senegal at the time. I was a co-founder for the DEIA, like the working, we working groups in the government, like working group and the committees and all that. So I was very interested in that. So when I came back to Washington, we had an office and I joined that office. Well, as you know, the very first executive order that came out the next day on January 20, that night, actually, there was President Trump put out an executive order banning everything DEIA as wasteful and racist and basically villainizing, right, the work. And that night, that Tuesday, so that Monday night, we got notices. We're watching the news. We know what's going on. That Tuesday morning, our bosses kind of said, listen, everybody come into the office if you're local, and basically be prepared to pack up your stuff because we know the office is done. And that afternoon at about 3:00 in the afternoon, we had like a GC, the general counsel, put us all on like a group call. We got into a room. It's like maybe 20 of us. So like not only my office, but people who were DEIA like advisors across the agency. And about 22 of us were put on administrative leave immediately, starting at 5:00 that evening. We lost all access to email, everything. Yeah, it was devastating. I was hurt. I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. I was angry. All those things. You have your life that you put into this work. You're doing good work, but then I'm like, okay, this was happening across the whole government, right? Like the USA, the DEIA thing. Well, about 7 days later, so that happened on so starting on Wednesday, I was on leave, and never have returned to that building because, within like 2 weeks of that, they like took over, like they removed the lease for USAID, pulled down the signs, and they tried to remove the memorial wall. Thank God, I think some representative stepped in and said, we're not going to desecrate that wall. Like we're going to have a respectful way to handle that. But it happened very quickly. And then they took out all of the heads of every department. So like if you were a director and then like the deputies, like the equivalent of like the director and 2 deputies across the board, 57 people like that next week were let go, not let go, I can't say it, administrative leave. We were not able to work, access to the computer, you couldn't do stuff. So we're effectively done. The blessing is that we were still getting paid, right? Because they can't fire us. There are some protections. The issue is always whether or not people are going to follow the rules, but they couldn't necessarily just fire us. But we knew we were gearing up to be RIFed, or like what they call reduction in force, which is a firing, but an official firing. So now we're about 2 weeks out. It's in a tailspin. Every day we're learning, because literally every day something was happening, not only with USAID, but also because remember, it's my world and I know it, but a lot of people have no idea what USAID is, especially in the United States. We're just a small little agency that gives money to foreigners. Like that's how, but what we do, we spend almost $21 billion a year around the world, all types of programs, whether it's democracy and governance, it's health, it's education, it's soft power, right? A lot of the good relationships that we have are as a result of the work that USAID does. When people come to the US different embassies and they want to visit even the senators and things, I've had to show generals around to my projects and things because we are executing those like goodwill projects that are happening across the world. It's USAID because we walk lock in step with the host nation to help them achieve their development goals, which are often is in line with ours. So health, education, economic development, women, gender inclusion, things along those lines. So shortly after that, I think about 2 weeks ago, everyone at USAID, with the exception of like maybe we were 10,000. Oh, that's the other thing, by the way. A lot of our work is done. We might be 10,000 on paper. Over half of those numbers are actual local staff in the countries that we work. So I think about maybe two or 3,000 are actually in Washington. The rest are overseas, a combination of foreign service and then what we call local service, locally employed staff. What will help them is that every nation has their own labor laws. So there'll be some protections for them, which is good, but for our contractors, right? So like if so for example, Petunia, when I was working in Senegal and I'm working on forced child begging, I'm not the one actually out sitting in the office doing it. I'm partnering with another institution to do it. I'm a donor, right? I might I'm creating the strategy. I design the program, but somebody else is executing and we pay them to do it. And then we monitor. So that's why I'm out in the field, right? I'm monitoring, making sure everything's going the way it goes. That's kind of how development works. Those contracts got cut. So we had people that, even on the DEIA side, people who were helping us do things. That day, I had people on my team. I was a manager. I had people on my team who, one was a civil servant. She was on leave. I had a contractor. He was fired that day. That was it. His company fired him. Gone. That's it. And within 2 weeks, you had whole organizations whose existence relied on the grants and things from USAID gone. We're getting announcements. If you watch LinkedIn, we've had to close our doors. I knew someone just moved here like January 6th to take a job with an implementer. By the 26th, she's gone. She's done. So when I say this has been devastating, and I haven't even talked about all of my colleagues who are overseas with children in school or aging parents they're caring for. And the very first time the administration mentioned, we want y'all gone in 30 days, or we're going to bring the military in, just villainized, essentially. That has since calmed down. They realize you literally can't do that. Even if you're going to move, anybody who's done these international moves, especially with a big organization, whether it's government or a multinational, there's sometimes a 6-month ramp. If I know I'm leaving in June, I'm booking stuff and getting stuff together latest February, right? You got to pack my stuff. You got to pack my car. I got to figure out what's going on. I have children in school that don't finish till June. That has been devastating. And then guess what? If we are going to be rift, because they've essentially said, we're only going to keep a couple of hundred of you all, right? Out of 4,000 direct hires. You're going to come back home. Many foreign service officers don't have homes. When I left Ghana, I had to come back and rent a place. I don't have a home, right? My home was wherever I was. And a lot of people, and even if people own homes, they usually have renters, right? Or some people don't. They've been out 10, 12 years. What am I coming home to?
Yeah,
Where am I going?
that was certainly my situation. I was out 20 years. So what was the home I was coming back to? It was a home I had to create. And luckily, I had some soft landing with children having homes here. So
Exactly.
But Noelle, I just want to applaud you because in a very short period of time, you've gone through something that may have shaken and broken and taken down many people. And if we were to say there's a Pepper story, certainly the Pepper is January 21st, January 20th, January 21st. And what you have been able to do is probably go through that death cycle, grief cycle, and you're not at the end of the cycle. So I appreciate you commenting and sharing about where you are and what has happened. I think that, again, it's a Pepper story in itself because you are moving on. You are finding a way to redefine your future and that of your family. And I just applaud you. I'm so proud of you. You're like my little sister. So I'm like, go sis. And I want to, though, pivot just a little bit because what I think is probably most powerful is that thank God you wrote a book a couple years ago and you got another income stream. So
right.
a lesson in and of itself. And your experiences, this is just another chapter, I'm sure, as things evolve, that you'll be able to share with others because it's a story of resilience. And I have so much faith that you'll be bouncing forward. You'll be bouncing even higher. It's not just bounce back, bounce forward. So there's a thing called People talk about post-traumatic stress, PTSD, but the higher percentage of people who go through trauma is post-traumatic stress growth, PTSD.
Mm,
So that's what we talk about on Pepper Soup Stories. How can I have gone through all of this and what do I then become on the other end of it? It's often allowed you to be the person that you are. Sometimes you need that fire, that push, you know, but it's in hindsight that you get some of that perspective. You're still in the now sight.
right.
So of it. So I just want to encourage you that in the hindsight, it might look like maybe a blessing that you're going to make it into. Okay.
That's the prayer. Thank you. Yeah, because I'm job hunting. I have to, I think my job will be gone. I don't know when, but it's probably a matter of weeks. And then yeah, and having to pivot. I'm grateful that I have a law degree. I'm barred. I can try to, I'm trying to pivot potentially that way. But remember, I'm out here with thousands, like thousands of us are hitting the job market at the same time, right? Like not only foreign service officers, but we're not the only federal officers that are getting removed, right? And so it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. We're in the midst of it, but I think the DC area probably is going to have some level of a mini recession. Has to, too many people losing stuff, and but we'll see. I mean, we're hoping that there's a lot of lawsuits and things going on, injunctions and things. So as long as people are getting paid to be able to pay their bills, I think we're good. But the moment like those kind of things stop and people have to figure it out, that's going to be the hard part. But then people, even if the fact that people will conserve their money, right, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future, is going to impact the economy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. It's definitely no straight line here, but that's where you harness up your resources that you might not think you have until when push comes shoving. That's when sometimes we learn who we are, whose we are. We didn't know before. And look at, what's all the capital that we have available to us, from intellectual capital to social capital to, 6 different types of capital. I just can't think of them all right now, but yeah, push us shove. Now, let's talk about what made you write the book. When did you write the book, actually?
I wrote it in June of 2020. Well, it was published in June of 2022. So I was working on it late 2021, like shortly after I arrived in Ghana. So I wrote the book the entire time I was in Accra. I would go on Sundays to like a lobby in like the Marriott or the Golden Tulip and take 4 hours and write and type.
Good for you, because you in the middle of wifing and mothering and a full-time job, and you took the time. I mean, I just want to applaud that discipline, because number one, there are many of us who dream of being an author or dream of that thing, and it's on the calendar someday. And we know that someday you can't find someday. So really anchoring down and, delivering on a promise to yourself is a big part of self-care. Keeping promises to yourself really helps to build your self-esteem. So I just want to applaud and acknowledge that for our soulmates, that thing that you want to do, get it done. Because look now.
Exactly. I wouldn't have.
Get to the world.
There was exactly, because I think what the driver was that because I've been in and out of the working so long, like I was frequently asked like, hey, I have a relative who's interested in that, or I have a girlfriend who wants to do that, or I have a nephew, can you talk to them? And I always did, no problem. But I was like, maybe I should just put it in a book, right? And so that if somebody was interested, the mechanics of it, right? Because there are the mechanics of like, okay, you need a visa, and then you need to figure out how to be able to stay long term. You can't just stay in a country. Things that Americans don't think about because we don't have to think about those things. The idea that like, for most places, especially like if most of us travel to other developed countries, we don't have to get visas to go to those places. And so the concept, I remember when I first joined the Foreign Service and I was a consular officer, like in Nigeria, I didn't know what a visa was. I had no idea what a visa was. I had no idea. And
I
so I didn't,
know. But hold on. We go to church and they praying for a visa. And I'm like, praying for a visa? Honey, what does that mean?
yeah, had no idea and wouldn't have to, right? Because so I also didn't, there was a little bit of a naivete showing up in Lagos, not knowing people are going to want to know me because of where I work. I didn't know that. You know what I mean? Or understand that. But I'm from Brooklyn, so I didn't get got. But it's easy for people to get got.
I didn't get got. I love it.
But you don't understand the power of those things, and like the idea that somebody can tell you no, you can't travel somewhere. Like we don't hear that, right? And so understanding, like just teaching a lot of Americans, like this is how that goes, and okay, if you want to leave, what are you going to do with your stuff? Because you have a life here, right? And the way the U.S. works, you still got to pay taxes. You still have something here. Okay, even if you move, where you going to put your stuff? You putting it in storage or you selling it? Basic things. How are you going to get your mail? Because the mail is still going to come. Are you going to send it to your mama's house? Or are you going to set up a P.O. box that somebody looks at? Just the nuts and bolts. The idea of like, how you choose which place to go to. You have some kind of hot places that everybody wants to go to, but it might not be the best place for you. Or, if you have health challenges, certain places won't have the medical infrastructure to support you, especially when you're talking about people who want to retire and things like that. So there are things to think about. School, you want to go with children. If you're going to put them in a private school, like the idea of compulsory education is a developed country thing where it's free for everybody. That was my first understanding. Like in Kenya, that was the first time that I had experienced where you have to pay to go to school. And if you can't afford it, you don't go. Right. So I remember one of the feelings that I had when I came back from Kenya for the first time was how spoiled we were as Americans. I'm like, we get a free education, and education is how we climb out of poverty. Right. So you can be broke, but if you're smart and you work hard, you can get a scholarship to college, and then you can get a scholarship to these places. Like there are pathways through free education that can lift you out of your circumstances that you were born into. That's not the case in most places on the planet. And particularly in developing countries. And so that was like,
it may not soon be the case here in America.
I know. That's what it looks like we're moving towards.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, share with a friend, leave a review, and connect with us on social media. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, soulmates, stay inspired, keep growing, and turn life's peppers into a flavorful soup. Connect below. Bye-bye for now.